Hello, YouTubers and NFL fans everywhere. This is Matt, the NFL Fanatic, with the rest of my Week 9 2014 NFL predictions. Well, this week I've already started out very well. I'm 1-0 as the New Orleans Saints beat the Carolina Panthers 28-10. I thought it was an extremely impressive win based on the factors that New Orleans had to go through. First, you have to realize that they played a very short week. They had to go from New Orleans on Sunday to Carolina on Thursday and play a very motivated Carolina Panther team who was just coming off one of their best games of the year when they took on Seattle and lost 13-9. And they were able to have a pretty dominant performance. Mark Ingram became the first running back since Deuce McAllister to have two back-to-back 100-yard rushing games. I thought it was extremely impressive, and if the Saints can continue to get this balance, they can be a very dangerous team coming up. Since after this game, after their game against Carolina, they have 3 straight home games against the Niners, the Bengals, and the Ravens. And with their home field advantage and the way they play at home, I think they could easily win all 3 of those games and pull away from everybody else in the NFC South. I think Jimmy Graham looked to form. Rob Ryan's defense got some big plays and some big fumbles and sacks. And on the other side for Carolina, I think their season is done. I think Ron Rivera is going to lose his job. He deserves to lose his job because after 4 years, to tell me that you've only had 1 winning season in 4 years, that's not good enough. I understand that Carolina had a lot of turnover from Steve Smith, their 2 corner, Captain Munnerlyn, Mike Mitchell, their 2 guards retiring, of course, Greg Hardy with his issues. They're all not there, and I get that. But when you have a run like that, you need to at least show the fans that we can be at least above average. Because when you have 3 below average years in a 4-year span, you deserve to get fired because you're not moving the team forward. And that's what I'm seeing with this Carolina team, that I haven't seen that much movement forward of the way I would expect it. Because, again, I didn't expect the Carolina Panthers to make the playoffs or, not even to make the playoffs. I would just want, as a Panthers fan, to at least win 8 to 9 games. Because that would at least show we're moving forward. Right now, this Panther team is on to lose another losing season. And if they go on to have another losing season, Ron Rivera deserves to get fired. And worse for Cam Newton, I don't think he's going to earn that $100 million contract that maybe a lot of fans think he deserves. Because I honestly do believe he does not deserve it with his body of work. Is it all his fault? No, but he has to move forward with a number 1 pick. He has almost like a Sam Bradford-esque resume, even though Cam Newton is better than Sam Bradford, because at least Cam Newton has made the playoffs, but I digress. So that's my thoughts on that. And now for everybody else, here are the rest of my picks for this week. Tomorrow, when the 1-6 Tampa Bay Buccaneers go to the 4-4 Cleveland Browns, I am taking the Cleveland Browns. When the 6-1 Arizona Cardinals go to the 6-2 Dallas Cowboys, I am taking the Arizona Cardinals. When the 5-2 Philadelphia Eagles go to the 4-4 Houston Texans, I am taking the Philadelphia Eagles. When the 1-7 New York Jets go to the 4-4 Kansas City Chiefs, I am taking the 4-3 Kansas City Chiefs. I am taking the Kansas City Chiefs. When the 1-7 Jacksonville Jaguars go to the 4-3-1 Cincinnati Bengals, I am taking the Cincinnati Bengals. When the 5-3 San Diego Chargers go to the 4-4 Miami Dolphins, I am taking the San Diego Chargers. When the 3-5 Washington Redskins go to the 3-5 Minnesota Vikings, I am taking the Washington Redskins. When the 2-6 St. Louis Rams go to the 2-5 St. Louis Rams go to the 4-3 San Francisco 49ers, I am taking the San Francisco 49ers. When the 6-1 Denver Broncos go to the 6-2 New England Patriots, I am going to take the Denver Broncos. When the 0-7 Oakland Raiders go to the 4-3 Seattle Seahawks, I am taking the Seattle Seahawks. When the 5-3 Baltimore Ravens go to the 5-3 Pittsburgh Steelers, I am taking the Pittsburgh Steelers. And on the Monday night game, when the 5-3 Indianapolis Colts go to the 3-4 New York Giants, I am going to take the Indianapolis Colts. For all fantasy owners out there, the Atlanta Falcons, Buffalo Bills, Chicago Bears, Detroit Lions, Green Bay Packers, and Tennessee Titans all have byes this week. So from Rodgers to Cutler to Marshall to Ryan to Jones, if any of those players on your fantasy teams, bench them because they will not be playing this week. I know that because I have to bench a few players of my own. But I digress again. Now, I have my thoughts on each game. Tampa at Cleveland. I am taking the Cleveland Browns to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers based on the fact that Cleveland has just had a better source of momentum and pride than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have been. Cleveland's been competitive in every one of their games, except maybe the one against Jacksonville, even though they really didn't get blown out by that one. They lost 24-6. But I'm looking, it's more on the mediocrity of Tampa. You have to look at Lovie Smith and say that he's been a huge disappointment. With all his experience in the Tampa area, along with his success in St. Louis and Chicago, you would expect the Buccaneers, with the talent they have, to win more games. They have 2 stud wide receivers. They have Doug Martin in the backfield. They have 2 solid corners. They have one of the best defensive lines in the game. They have Levante David, one of the best linebackers. They have Gerald McCoy, one of the best defensive tackles. And they've only managed to get 1 win. And it was just a real shame to see that end of that game for Bucs fans, because with a minute and a half left, the way they've been playing the Vikings, each team's defense had stepped up big in big moments. But the Jenkins, their tight end, the one that caught the touchdown to take the lead for the game, was also the one that coughed up the game. So he really didn't get much praise, but he didn't get that much blame, so it cancels out, and he just goes on as the rookie tight end. But I just don't like this aura of this Tampa team. Tampa just has not been able to close games. Their offensive line has been pathetic, and that Cleveland defense, for the most part, has gotten to a lot of quarterbacks this year. They've gotten a lot of pressure. They've gotten a lot of sacks. They've gotten, under duress. And I expect Mike Glennon to be under more duress this weekend. I think also Brian Hoyer, who's now 8-3 as the Cleveland Browns starting quarterback, I believe, he will continue to move forward in this game, because Cleveland's had the easiest 3 games anybody's had to face this year. Tampa, Oakland, Jacksonville. 3 one-win or winless teams in a row. And I still can't believe they lost to Jacksonville, but again, that's a different story for a different day. But I trust Cleveland's defense enough to get to Mike Glennon. Their running game will be effective enough based on what I've seen from a lot of running backs against Tampa. D'Angelo Williams had a big day. Le'Veon Bell had a monster day. Justin Forsett had a big game. Steven Jackson got a big. So I expect Ben Tate to have a good game. And with that control, they should be able to win this game. Can Tampa put up a fight? Absolutely. They've been competitive in all their games. But I'm going to take Cleveland based on the fact that they have more overall talent. They have a better overall feel with momentum. And I just don't expect Tampa to be able to close this game out in Cleveland. Also, Brian Hoyer's only really lost 1 start at home his entire career. So that's why I'm taking Cleveland to beat Tampa. Arizona over Dallas. I'm taking the Arizona Cardinals, and this was a tough game for me because I'm a big Cardinals supporter. For anybody out there, I've supported this team since last year with Bruce Arians, but I was really concerned about Dallas if they had beat Washington, just because I thought Dallas had some better attributes than Arizona did. But after what I saw on Monday night, the way the Redskins were able to full out blitz that Dallas offensive line, and they were not prepared enough to counteract. I think the way Arizona is, being the number 1 blitzing defense in the league, and also being the number 1 rushing defense in the league, I think that'll be a huge factor. I will make this statement right now. I know Dallas' offensive line has been good, but I expect DeMarco Murray to not, and I'm going to repeat that again, DeMarco Murray to not get 100 yards rushing in this game. And I understand the bigger issue, of course, for me, is Tony Romo. I think Tony Romo's back injury was huge for me, even though it is a back contusion. So it's really not the most serious of kind, but I just can't trust a fully or a non-100% Romo against this Arizona team. Arizona knows how to win these games. They have all sorts of offensive weapons. Andre Ellington will do his thing. I think Patrick Peterson not being able to play will be huge for the Cowboys' sake, because that's going to eliminate that number 1 corner threat on Dez, even though I think Antonio Cromartie can do a good job, but I'll trust Patrick Peterson more than Antonio Cromartie. But I'm going to take the Cardinals because I think that running defense will stop DeMarco Murray's 100-yard rushing streak. I've trusted it enough. They only held LaShawn McCoy to 85, and that Philadelphia offensive line has gotten better. It still has some injuries on it, and they still need some guys, but I think they can get to DeMarco and stop that 100 yards. And if them not getting that 100 yards rushing on the ground, it's going to have to go back to Romo or Whedon. And if it's Whedon doing it, I like my chances against this Arizona defense, the way they've been playing. I think it's going to be a fun game, competitive game. And this is definitely one of the games of the week. This is my number 2 game of the week. And if I had to say for a lock and for a score, I would say, this is my number 2 game. I'll say Dallas 27, Arizona 31. I'll say 4 points. So that's why I'm taking the Cardinals over the Cowboys. Philadelphia at Houston, I am taking the Philadelphia Eagles based on the fact that Houston really has not beaten anybody really good. Houston's beaten Tennessee, Oakland, the Redskins, and the Bills. Okay, the Bills win. That's pretty impressive in kind of the retrospect of how they've been doing. But I'm looking at this Eagles team, and even though Nick Foles threw 2 terrible interceptions, they almost had a chance to win the game. If Jordan Matthews' feet are in, the Eagles win that game, and Nick Foles' deficiencies get swept under the rug for another week. But I told everybody out there that was watching this game, expect Nick Foles to get exposed. Because I've told people all along this year, Nick Foles is not playing at the level that he was playing last year, but he has regressed. He's gone from 64% completion to 59%. He's gone from 27 to 2, that was his touchdown interception ratio, to 12 to 9. That is not bad, but that's a definite regression. That's definitely a huge drop in ratio compared to last year. And you saw it in the Cardinal game. If those 2 interceptions don't get thrown, the Arizona Cardinals don't have the opportunity to win that game, and the Eagles go on to 6-1, and it puts all the pressure on the Cowboys. But I looked at this game and said, Houston has an advantage on defense. They do, because they have a much better defensive line. J.J. Watt's going to get through that line a lot. He's been just wrecking havoc. And a little side note, I did kind of appreciate a little humor in the selfie that he took after Zach Mettenberger. And if you don't know that story, look up Zach Mettenberger and selfie. It's pretty pathetic. That's why they lost by 14. But I looked at it and said the defenses, I'll give Houston the edge on defense with Watt and those boys against those Philly guys, because besides the Giant game, the Philadelphia defense has not really been able to be as effective as the Houston defense has been. And I looked at the secondary as well, because I like Houston with Joseph and Swearinger and KO, and that's better than Philly secondary from what I've seen. And I looked at the running backs, and I said that canceled out, because I think LaShawn and Arian at their best, you can make a debate about which one of those is better. And then the reason why I took Philadelphia and Houston was because of the quarterback. Ryan Fitzpatrick, in the biggest of games for this team, has not been able to get the drives they needed. Fitzpatrick was the one that pretty much sealed the Steeler game. He couldn't get them down against the Cowboy game. And then in the Indy game, he was the one that fumbled on the last attempt for them to win. And I expect Nick Foles, even if he makes a mistake, which I kind of, expect him to, I think Fitzpatrick will make another mistake to counteract it, and that won't be a play. I think this game can be competitive, and I think Philadelphia has a definite challenge with Houston's defense, but I'm going to take Philadelphia based on the fact that I trust Nick Foles a bit more in this type of environment than I trust Ryan Fitzpatrick. And it showed over the year. So that's the thing in Philadelphia over Houston. Jets at Chiefs. Oh, this was easy. This is Kansas City all the way. I think the New York Jets are free-falling at the seams. I watched that game against Buffalo. 3 interceptions in a quarter. 2 of 3 attempts he threw interceptions. That's pathetic. And just to see Michael Vick in there, I'm just going, Rex, what have you done? You've made Michael Vick look like Geno. And that's a problem, because when you look at Michael Vick's resume, he shouldn't be in the conversation with Geno. But that's how bad they looked. Okay? Chris Johnson hasn't been very effective at all. And Vick fumbled 4 times. And Geno has to get out of there. And in fact, for me, as a Tim Tebow supporter, I'm really upset at the Jets organization. Because Tim Tebow, no matter what, he could have at least lifted the morale of this team. And I guarantee Tim Tebow could win more games with this Jets team than Geno or Mike Vick could do right now. Because there's something about him that he would will these guys to play better. He would have enough talent. He would be able to see things a bit more. And he would just have more instincts and more, clutch genes than what I've seen out of Geno and Vick. Geno has been the exact opposite, and I expect Geno to get released after this year because Geno is not the answer for this team. And I feel bad for all the West Virginia alums that have to watch him, represent your school with such ineptitude. Because I know for everybody that besides Tavon Austin, you really haven't had probably a credible player in West Virginia for a while. But I digress. But I looked at this Kansas City team, and I'm going, the way they looked against the Rams, they absolutely killed the Rams. And the Rams had some talent around them. And, Justin Houston had 3 sacks. That offensive line got beat up. So if they can do that against the Rams, imagine what they can do against this Jet team. Rex really has no corner, so Alex Smith can pretty much relax. I even think you could put Aaron Murray back in there. I know Alex Smith has a shoulder problem. You could put Aaron Murray in there, and I guarantee you he could beat Vic and the Jets if how they've been playing. I don't really have any confidence in the Jets at all. This is one of the loudest stadiums in the NFL. They're coming off the momentum from the Royals. Quick little side note. Congrats for the Giants for winning the World Series. Madison Bumgarner, what a beast. But they're going to take that KC, downslide on Tuesday and give Kansas City something to really look forward to by thrashing the Jets. I think the game is going to be completely one-sided, and there's really no way that the Jets should win based on everything that's there. So that's what I'm taking the Chiefs over the Jets. Cincinnati and Jacksonville, basically the same thing. I kind of feel that Jacksonville over the last 4 weeks has been competitive. But the one thing that I'm realizing is Blake Bortles is playing terrible. Even for a rookie standards. He has 6 touchdowns compared to 12 interceptions. He has it the bad way, where his interceptions are double. And if you think about it, the Miami Dolphins would not have won, I don't think, would have won that game if Blake Bortles doesn't give the team 14 points. And with the way Cincinnati's defense looked against Baltimore the other day, I expect the same against Jacksonville, even worse. They're at home. They've been pretty much dominant at home. They are going to get A.J. Green back, so that's going to be even more of a nightmare for Jacksonville's corners. I expect them to shut down Denard Robinson or Toby Gerhart, no matter which one it is. And I expect Blake Bortles to have another rough day. The Bengals are able to get 2 interceptions on Flacco. I expect them to get at least 3 to 4 against Bortles with the way he's been just chucking them up. I think this game, again, is kind of like the Jet game. It's really, lopsided. I'm going to take the home team on this one. They just have every facet of the game. Cincinnati beats Jacksonville win. And I think the only way Jacksonville can win is if their defense can get to Dalton. But I don't expect that to happen. So that's why I'm taking the Bengals over the Jaguars. San Diego over Miami. This was really tough for me because I found something out today that was very interesting. San Diego has not won in Miami since 1982. And I think that was the game when it was the hottest game ever played or something like that. I remember that Kellen Winslow and all those boys, and San Diego was able to win that one. And I remember there was a picture of Kellen Winslow having to get carried by his teammates because of the heat exhaustion. But I have to take San Diego in this one just because San Diego is kind of at a crossroads right now. After going 5-1 and people saying that they're the second best team in the league, they've free-falled a bit. They lost a close game to KC at home, and they had a decisive loss against Denver on the road. I think, again, this is a big West Coast, East Coast perspective. And also, to add a little insult to injury, Miami did beat San Diego last year in a little bit of an upset. So Miami has the advantage. I think Miami's defense has been playing very well. Tannehill's been playing solid. Of course, they got the 2 big sixes against Bortles that basically helped seal the game. And Miami really is an underrated Chief kind of team. That nobody's really, surprised that they are. Nobody's really talking about that they're 500, and they're still in this AFC playoff race. But I'm going to take San Diego based on the fact that I think San Diego's defense will step up. Okay, this Miami offense, for the most part, has not played as good a defense as San Diego has. Ryan Matthews, I think, should be back, so they should be able to use him. I think Brandon Oliver can get through this Miami defense. Jamal Charles and Niall Davis were able to from Kansas City, and so were C.J. Spiller and Fred Jackson. And I have confidence in the San Diego team that against this Miami team, they should be able to buck the trend and get this win in Miami and give them a little bit of confidence going into their bye that they are 6-3 and just in it with everybody else in the AFC. Even though I would not be surprised if Miami wins, but I'm going to go with San Diego based on just overall talent and momentum. So that's the thing is San Diego over Miami. Washington and Minnesota, this is my awkward toss-up game of the week. I say that because I don't expect both teams to make the playoffs. I don't even expect both teams to have a winning record. But when I looked at this game, I took the I'm going to take the Washington Redskins. And I know what you're thinking. You're looking at Minnesota. Over the last couple of weeks, they've taken out 3 running backs. They took out Doug Martin, they took out C.J. Spiller, and they took out Fred Jackson. So Alfred Morris, he should be very aware. But I'm looking at the Washington Redskins, and I'm looking at a team that was able to get through that Dallas offensive line very easily. And looking at Teddy Bridgewater, knowing how how many rookie mistakes he's had, along with how many times he's gotten sacked, I just feel that that's what the Redskins are going to do. And also, I just look at I know RG3 is coming back, and a lot of Redskin fans are very happy, but I would be also very concerned because RG3 has a lot of pressure on him due to little Colt McCoy getting the biggest upset of the year so far. And I would at least say that if RG3 goes down again, I have more confidence in Colt McCoy than I did ever before. Because I've seen Colt McCoy play a game with the Redskins, and he's the only quarterback to actually start a full game and win the game. So, with the weapons they have, they'll be able to run Morris a bit. I think their corners, with that receiving core, they're not going to get that much on them, even though I do think Bridgewater has definitely a huge advantage with corners, even though I did notice the name of Rashad Breeland. I looked him up, he played very well. He basically shut down Des Bryant, so I think that'll be a fun matchup against Cordero. And I think Biggers will probably have Patterson or Jennings. But I'm going to go with the Redskins because they were able to get a lot of pressure on Romo. And I think if they get that pressure on Bridgewater and he's not having enough time, he's going to make some rookie mistakes. He's not going to be able to read the blitz enough. And I just think that'll be the advantage for RG3 to use. I think RG3 definitely is going up against a secondary that's had some problems. Even though I do hope that RG3 does not try to run out of bounds again or do any of that kind of sneaky stuff. But I'm going to take the Redskins because they just have a better overall sense of talent. And the last time the Vikings played at home, the last two times the Vikings have played at home, they got beat by Buffalo at the end, and they got whipped by Detroit, who sacked Bridgewater 8 times. And I expect the Redskins to put that same amount of pressure on Bridgewater, and I don't think that line will hold up. So that's what I'm taking the Washington Redskins to beat the Vikings. St. Louis at San Fran, I'm taking San Fran because they've already beat St. Louis 31-17 earlier in the year. Austin Davis and them really have not looked good at all. And Jeff Fisher is kind of like, Rex Ryan, he's on his way out because this Ram team has been a complete shell of what they needed to be. And I understand Sam Bradford was hurt, even though, again, I consider Sam Bradford to be a bust. And Austin Davis has pulled his weight. But looking at how this Niner team is, they are angry from what Denver did to them 2 weeks ago. They got embarrassed and blown out by the Denver Broncos. And they're going to be wanting to take it out on a team that really doesn't have that much around them. And you also saw the problems St. Louis' defense had. And they really haven't been able to add anything. Even though they did get Mark Barron from the Rams. Even though Mark Barron really has not been playing well. So that's not that much of an improvement. And I just expect the Niners to kind of just physically dominate this game. They have been able to beat the Rams the majority of the time in the Jim Harbaugh era. And I think they actually only have one win. They have not beaten the Niners in San Francisco since Jim Harbaugh took over. They had the tie, but that was it. Every other time, the Niners have beaten the Rams pretty handily at home. So I'm going to trust that, and that's what I'm going to take the Niners over the Rams. Denver at New England. This is my number one game of the week. I am really looking forward to this game because, again, it's obvious. It's Brady and Manning, 16. Hard to believe that they're playing their 16th game. The score, for anybody wanting to know, it's 10-5 in favor of Brady. And everybody, wants to know, who do you want in a game? Who would you want to build around? Would you want to build around Peyton or would you want to build around Tom? Well, if you want my opinion, I have always taken Tom Brady. And I understand what people would look at that you could say, well, Peyton has a lot better stats. I get that. And if you put me on the floor and said, statistically, who would you take? I'll take Peyton Manning. I think everybody would agree with that. But when you look at Tom Brady, I also understand he has had a better defense to work with. But the quarterback position is being able, to me, is more important about taking lesser talent and being able to work around it to make your offense better. And over the last 2 years, or over the majority of Tom Brady's career, Tom Brady's only had 3 legitimate weapons to go to his entire career. He had Wes Welker, Randy Moss, and Rob Gronkowski right now. Even though Rob Gronkowski, with his injuries, nobody really can trust him. And I respect that more because Peyton Manning has had Marvin Harris. He had Marvin Harrison for 9 years. He had Reggie Wayne for about 10 years. Those are 2 of the best receivers in the modern era. And then you have Demaryius Thomas, Eric Decker, Emmanuel Sanders, who he's making brilliant right now, and Julius Thomas. That's a much better core to work with than what Brady's had. So the fact that Brady's gotten them to 6-2 is remarkable, and I think that's where I go with Brady. And also, I just expect Tom Brady in bigger games to win. Again, Peyton Manning's 11-12 in the postseason. Tom Brady's 18-8. And I understand, yes, he's been 8-8 in his last 16 postseason games. So again, he's not been absolutely 10-0 for those 3 Super Bowls like he was before. But for anybody asking my opinion on the Brady-Manning debate, I go with Brady because I respect the championships he's won, the postseason games he's won, and the fact that he's worked more with less. And that when you give credit to the New England Patriots, the number one guy you look at, there's no other factors you could look at, it's Tom Brady. With all that said, being about Tom Brady, though, I am going to take the Denver Broncos to win this game. I think the Denver Broncos right now have been the best team in the NFL. They've scored at least 30 points a game, and they beat their opponents their last 4 games by an average of 18 points. And I expect Denver's defense to be much better. I understand it is in New England, and Manning, I think, is 5-9 in cold weather games, which are games below 40 degrees. And again, I could be off by a couple games. And I understand the last time they were in New England, Manning had a 24-point lead on this team, and Brady was able to come back. Would I be surprised if Tom Brady won this game? No, nobody would. But I'm looking at this Denver defense, and this Denver defense is much more improved than it was last year. I think also they have a much better running back. Ronnie Hillman has won the job for Monty Ball. I'm going to repeat that again for everybody. Ronnie Hillman has won the running back job from Monty Ball. Because he's been too consistent enough over the last 3 weeks to have over 100 yards in 3 straight games. It's giving that Denver offense balance. And I think the best way, again, to beat the top quarterbacks, what's the one thing you need to do? You need to be able to run the ball. And I've really seen the New England Patriots mostly. I know Jonas Gray had a big game the other week, and they still have Vereen. But not having Stephen Ridley there will be huge because I don't expect them to have that much balance. And also, I just expect Peyton to kind of right the ship here. Ever since he's been in Denver, I think the last 2 regular season games have been in New England. So he needs to get this monkey off his back. Because let's say the Broncos, with their schedule, even though it's really not that hard left, let's say they lose 1 more game and New England gets that tiebreaker. I'll say this, Tom Brady should get to a Super Bowl. Because if he can't beat this team at home, Peyton Manning, then he's never going to get there if New England gets home field. Even though New England has a much tougher schedule coming ahead, they probably have the toughest schedule out of anybody in the league. This is my number 1 game of the week, and for anybody out there that's picking, for me, a score, I'll say Denver wins 37, New England 34. So that's my thought, and that's my number 1 game of the week, and that's Denver over New England by 3. Oakland at Seattle. Again, this is easy. This is the worst team in the NFL by far. I actually feel really bad for that whole organization because I definitely hoping the curse of Gruden factor. They have done nothing right, and they're going into the worst place to play in the NFL with an angry Seattle team that wants to show their dominance again. And that's why I'm really happy to have Russell Wilson as my fantasy quarterback because he should be able to go off on this defense. I feel really bad for Oakland because they really have no chance. If Oakland wins this game, Seattle has lost pretty much all respect for me because there is nothing that Oakland has that Seattle doesn't have better of. They have a much better quarterback, they have a better offensive line, and they just have better talent. That Legion of Boom, Derek Carr is going to have a terrible day. I'm just going to tell you that right now. He's not going to be able to hear anything. He's still a rookie. He's still made fumbles. That offensive line is going to get beat up, and Seattle should feel really confident to go to 5-3 and still keep their hat in the NFC West race. It's that easy to me. When I saw this game, I just said, Oakland, Seattle. Super Bowl champs, worst team, angry Seahawks, Seattle wins. All right, and the Sunday night game, Pittsburgh over Baltimore. This is my number 3 game of the week, and I'm really looking forward to this one as well. Not just because I'm a Raven fan, but it's a Sunday night game. It's Ravens Steelers. You can't beat it. But I'm taking the Pittsburgh Steelers just off the fact that the Indianapolis Colts the last 3 weeks have played the AFC North. The last two games that they had played, they had won 13-20 against the Baltimore Ravens, and they had shut out the Bengals 27-0. So when you're thinking they're going into Pittsburgh, it's going to be one of those perspectives that they should be able to put up a fight against Pittsburgh and hold their defense, hold their offense to a good amount of points. I did not expect the Pittsburgh Steelers to put up 51 points in the game. Ben Roethlisberger became the second quarterback in NFL history, or the only quarterback in NFL history to have back-to-back to have two 500-yard games in his career. I thought that was extremely impressive. Antonio Brown, man, I am loving him, and I will tell you this right now. I think Antonio Brown needs to be put in the conversation of top 5 receivers because the way he's been playing, there's very few receivers that I would not take right now over Antonio Brown. Maybe Calvin, maybe Larry, maybe Marshall, maybe AJ, but that's it. I'll put Antonio Brown right there, number 5. And, anybody in the comment section that disagrees, agrees, maybe should a little more. You definitely want to see what he's done, and he's having another monster year. And definitely paying the investment off of that 5-year, $35 million contract he signed 2 years ago. Because they are getting way more than what Antonio Brown. They're getting way more bang for their buck than they expected from Antonio Brown. But I'm going to take Pittsburgh in this one just based on the fact that I don't like our defense's chances, Baltimore's defense's chances. We just lost our corner, Jimmy Smith, for a few weeks. Our corners have already been, shrunken down. And the way Pittsburgh's offense just looked, I just don't like that confidence in that. Because the way Martavius Bryant's been stepping up, Lance Moore's been getting into action, Heath Miller's starting to get into it. This offense just looks way too potent because now they've scored 81 points in the last 2 games. They are finding their stride and they're playing a defense that secondary is becoming one of the weakest in the league, and I just don't like that matchup. I expect Le'Veon Bell to have another solid, day on the ground, even though our run defense is pretty good. But I think he'll contribute. And I'm not saying the Ravens, are going to get blown out. This is Ravens Steelers. I'm going to go back to what, they said, like 9 of the last 10 times this game has come down to a field goal or less. And I'll just say this. The last time we won in Pittsburgh was 2011. It was the last time we swept them. And that's what we're going for now. Ever since then, ever since 2008, I believe we have only won that one time in Pittsburgh since then. So I think that's 1, 2, 3, 4. No, wait, no. No, we won in 2010. But we are 2 and 1, 2, 3, 4. I think we're like 2 and 4 over the last 6 years against Pittsburgh, at Pittsburgh. And just with how this Pittsburgh team has momentum, I just feel really confident that this Pittsburgh team should be Baltimore in another classic Ravens-Steelers game. I think the Ravens need to win this game because now of us getting swept by the Bengals and now getting overtaken by the Steelers, I think it's going to be really hard for us to get that wild card spot because I think, the Steelers or Bengals, they'll get the division, and then probably one of those two teams, they'll get one of the wild cards. And unless, the only chance we would have is beating San Diego, and if we don't, then we're done. So we need this game so we have that sweet feeling that Cincinnati has over us that we can have over Pittsburgh. But I don't expect that to happen. It's too competitive a game, and I'm going to take the home points on this one. And if I had to pick a score for this is the third game, I'll say Pittsburgh wins 24, Baltimore 21. I'll go with the field goal. 24-21. So that's my thoughts on the Ravens-Steelers game. And then finally the Monday night game, Indianapolis at the Giants. Indianapolis got embarrassed by Pittsburgh, even though they really did not get blown out by Pittsburgh. I thought the game was pretty close, and actually Pittsburgh had a chance to tie the game, or Indianapolis had a chance to tie the game back up. But again, they had the costly safety, and the big man was able to get down for the touchdown. I think they are going to be motivated to get right back on track. And this Giant team, even though the last time they played very well, only a 10-point loss to the Cowboys, I expect this Colt team to get a big win because I think Andrew Luck has been having another monster year. Eli Manning, he's had his ups and downs, But I'm just looking at this Colts team, and they just have way more talent. That Giants secondary has been burned by receivers. Can that offensive line get to the Colts defensive line? I think it can, because they got through that Cowboy defense pretty well last game. But I just don't like the Giants running backs. Even though Rashad Jennings could be coming back, that's what I heard. But I'm going to take the Colts in this one just because they have more overall talent. And if I had to trust Andrew Luck right now with the weapons he has compared to Eli Manning, I'll take Andrew Luck. Even though, again, it's a big game for my Bradshaw. Welcome back to the Giants. I think this is like, a second game against them. And also, I think the Giants won their preseason game. So I think the Colts, even though it's minor, I think they'll be motivated to play. So that's why I'm taking the Colts over the Giants. So that's it. So best of luck to all the teams. Best of luck to all the players. Best of luck to all fellow prognosticators, and best of luck to all fantasy players. And that's it. So if you have any comments or you like my videos, like, rate, subscribe. And that's it. So until next week, this is Matt the NFL Fanatic signing off. Till then, so long.